The insistent, jarring thump, thump, thump against the solid oak of the front door was quickly escalating into a full-blown assault, rattling the very foundations of Alex's usually serene home. It wasn't the polite knock of a neighbor, nor the professional rap of a delivery driver. This was an aggressive, demanding percussion that spoke of authority and impatience, sending a ripple of unease through the house even before the frantic, agitated chirps and rustles from deeper within. The sanctuary began, Alex wiping grease from their hands, a perpetual state, it seemed, when you ran a bustling wildlife rescue, rushed from the makeshift clinic in the back, heart hammering against their ribs with a sudden, icy premonition. Before they could even reach the entryway, a loud crack echoed through the house, followed by the sickening splintering of wood as the lock gave way. The door burst inward, sending dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, and through the gaping maw stepped two figures, their faces grim, their movements stiff with self-importance. Mrs. Henderson, the HOA president, a woman whose perfectly coiffed silver hair seemed to embody rigidity itself, led the charge, her eyes scanning the foyer with an almost predatory glint. Behind her, Mr. Peterson, a perpetually nervous man who seemed to shrink within his too large blazer, clutched a clipboard as if it were a shield, his gaze darting around nervously. Alex Miller. Mrs. Henderson's voice, usually a clipped, precise instrument for dictating lawn care regulations, was now a low, dangerous rumble. We have received numerous persistent complaints regarding unauthorized activities and unusual noises. We are here, pursuant to Article 7, Section B of the HOA bylaws, to conduct a full inspection. Alex's blood ran cold, a familiar surge of protective fury overriding their initial shock. "You can't just break into my home," they retorted, stepping forward, arms instinctively spreading wide as if to physically shield the sanctuary behind them. "This is a gross violation of privacy. What unauthorized activities are you even talking about?" Mrs. Henderson merely raised an eyebrow, a practiced gesture of disdain. "We're talking about unapproved pets, Mr. Miller. Persistent reports of exotic animals. Neighbors have reported strange sounds, unusual smells, and even glimpses of what they describe as wildlife in your windows. Our hands are tied, Alex. We have a duty to maintain community standards." As she spoke, a high-pitched, almost human-like chatter, growing increasingly frantic, emanated from just beyond the living room archway. Mr. Peterson, startled, jumped slightly, nearly dropping his clipboard. "What was that?" he stammered, his eyes wide. Mrs. Henderson, however, seemed to steel herself, a look of grim satisfaction spreading across her features. "It appears our concerns are well-founded. Mr. Peterson, secure the entrance. Alex, I strongly advise you to cooperate." Ignoring Alex's protests, Mrs. Henderson strode purposefully towards the sound, her heavy footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Alex moved to intercept her, but Mr. Peterson, despite his nervous demeanor, awkwardly blocked the archway. "Ma'am, I really think we should wait for the proper authorities," he mumbled, glancing apologetically at Alex, but Mrs. Henderson was already rounding the corner. The sound intensified, a frantic squeaking and chattering accompanied by the rustle of leaves. Alex's heart plummeted. Not him. Please, not him first. A moment later, a sharp gasp from Mrs. Henderson cut through the air. "Good heavens!" Her voice was laced with a mixture of revulsion and sheer bewilderment. Alex finally managed to sidestep Peterson, rushing to the living room. There, perched precariously on the edge of what appeared to be a meticulously constructed, multi-tiered indoor enclosure, was a creature of startling beauty and raw energy. A red-handed tamarin, its tiny, expressive face a mask of wide-eyed panic, its small, quick hands clutching a half-eaten banana. It was a recent rescue, pulled from a deplorable illegal pet trade operation, still skittish, still recovering, and now completely exposed. The tamarin chattered frantically, its bright, intelligent eyes darting from Mrs. Henderson's horrified face to Alex's resigned one, before disappearing back into the lush foliage of its habitat. Mrs. Henderson stood frozen, a hand pressed. To her chest, her usually composed features contorted in disbelief. "What? What is that? Is that a monkey? In your living room?" Her voice rose, bordering on a squeal. Mr. Peterson peered around Alex's shoulder, his jaw slack. It's so small, but it's definitely a monkey, Mrs. Henderson." Alex, despite the crushing weight of the situation, felt a surge of defiance. This was their life, their passion, their sacred mission. "That, Mrs. Henderson, is a red-handed tamarin," Alex stated, their voice low but firm, every word imbued with an unwavering resolve. "And it's just the beginning. You have no idea what you've just walked into." The air hung heavy with the unspoken truth, the sheer, unimaginable scale of what lay hidden behind the innocent facade of a suburban home, a secret sanctuary now terrifyingly on the brink of exposure. "You have no idea what you've just walked into." Alex's words, charged with a blend of resignation and unwavering conviction, hung in the air, a challenge flung at the stunned Mrs. Henderson and the bewildered Mr. Peterson. Mrs. Henderson, recovering from the shock of the tamarin, straightened, her face hardening into a mask of indignant resolve. "We will see about that, Mr. Miller. This is clearly a gross violation of every single bylaw regarding pets, noise, and home occupancy. I demand you show us the full extent of this menagerie." Her voice was now sharp, cutting through the low hum of the house. Without waiting for Alex's consent, she pushed past, her eyes narrowed with a newfound, almost aggressive determination. Mr. Peterson, looking increasingly uncomfortable, trailed behind her, casting an apologetic glance at Alex. "Mrs. Henderson, perhaps we should wait for a more official inspection team," he ventured weakly, but she merely waved him off with a dismissive hand. Alex, knowing resistance was futile and perhaps even counterproductive, took a deep breath and followed, leading them deeper into the labyrinthine layout of their home, each step a calculated surrender. They passed through the living room, where the tamarin had retreated to the safety of its carefully constructed habitat, its bright eyes peeking out from the foliage. Beyond, a heavy, insulated door, previously disguised to blend seamlessly with the wall, stood slightly ajar. Mrs. Henderson paused, an eyebrow arching. "What is through here, Mr. Miller?" she demanded. Alex pushed the door fully open, revealing a dedicated, climate-controlled wing that had once been a seldom-used guest suite. The air inside was different, clean, humid, and filled with the subtle scent of rich earth and clean straw. Sunlight streamed in from reinforced skylights, illuminating a series of meticulously designed enclosures. In the center, a majestic Harris hawk, with piercing amber eyes, sat regally on a perch, a rehabilitation patient with a mended wing. Across from it, a large, glass-fronted terrarium housed a vibrantly colored blue iguana, rescued from a cruel roadside attraction, now basking under a heat lamp, its scales shimmering. Further along, smaller, specialized habitats offered glimpses of tiny, delicate creatures, an injured flying squirrel, a group of orphaned baby opossums nestled in a warm incubator. It was a symphony of life, a miniature ecosystem carefully maintained, each enclosure clean, spacious, and tailored to its inhabitants' needs. Mrs. Henderson took one step into the room, then another, her previous anger slowly morphing into a wide-eyed, disbelieving horror. Her gaze swept over the habitats, her mouth agape. Mr. Peterson, however, seemed to lose some of his tension, a flicker of awe crossing his face as he took in the quiet dignity of the hawk. "My word," Mrs. Henderson finally gasped, her voice barely a whisper. This is not a pet project, Mr. Miller. This is an operation. What in the blazes is all of this?" Alex, seizing the moment, walked calmly to a nearby wall, where a framed certificate hung alongside a professionally printed banner. "This," Alex stated, their voice clear and steady, "is the Sanctuary Haven Exotic Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation Center." And yes, Mrs. Henderson, it is an operation. A fully licensed, federally and state-approved nonprofit organization dedicated to rescuing, rehabilitating, and, when possible, releasing exotic animals that have been neglected, abused, or illegally trafficked. Alex reached for a binder from a nearby shelf, its pages thick with official seals and signatures. "Here are the permits. USDA licensing, state wildlife rehabilitation permits, veterinary agreements, all up to date and in order." As Alex presented the binder, Mrs. Henderson snatched it, her eyes rapidly scanning the documents, disbelief warring with a dawning, furious realization. Her face flushed a deep crimson. "Licensed! Licensed! This is preposterous. You mean to tell me you have a zoo operating in your suburban home just 2 doors down from the HOA president, and we knew nothing about it?" She slammed the binder shut, her eyes blazing. "This changes nothing, Mr. Miller. Licensing or no licensing, this is a flagrant violation of community rules. The noise, the wildlife. This is not what this community stands for. You have deceived us all." Mr. Peterson, meanwhile, was actually reading some of the documents, a look of growing understanding on his face. He looked from the majestic hawk to Alex, a silent question in his eyes. But Mrs. Henderson was on a rampage. "This is an absolute outrage. Fines, immediate cessation of operation, animal removal. You will be facing the full legal force of the Homeowners Association, Mr. Miller. We will serve you with an injunction immediately. This is untenable. This is a residential community, not an animal prison." Her voice echoed through the sanctuary, momentarily startling some of the quieter inhabitants. Alex stood firm, meeting her fury with a calm, steely gaze. "An animal prison? No. This is freedom. This is hope." A brief, poignant flashback flashed through Alex's mind, a quiet moment from years ago. The tiny, emaciated body of a baby kinkajou abandoned in a cardboard box by the side of a highway, its eyes barely open, its fur matted and dull. Alex had scooped it up, feeling its fragile warmth, and knew in that instant, holding that trembling life, that their path was set. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling, a visceral need to protect the voiceless, to mend the broken, to offer a second chance to creatures that the world had discarded. That tiny kinkajou, now thriving and playful in an expert care facility, had been the catalyst, the spark that ignited the unyielding dedication behind every license, every enclosure, every long night of care. This sanctuary was not a choice, it was an imperative. Emerging from the fleeting memory, Alex's resolve solidified. "Mrs. Henderson," Alex said, their voice resonating with quiet power, "I understand you have regulations, but I have a responsibility, and I have rights. These animals are not pets. They are rescue beneficiaries. The sanctuary is legally operating. You will find that your bylaws do not supersede federal and state wildlife protection laws." With a determined breath, Alex pulled out their phone, their thumb already navigating to a contact. "This is a rescue, not a violation, and you can expect to hear from my attorney and the Sanctuary Haven Legal Defense Fund very, very soon." The click of the phone connecting with the line was the only sound in the tense silence, a clear declaration of war. The news spread like wildfire, ignited by the spark of Mrs. Henderson's furious phone calls and the dramatic, if slightly skewed, account given by Mr. Peterson, who, it turned out, had a sister working for the local newspaper. Within 24 hours, Alex's quiet suburban street was transformed into a bustling spectacle, a testament to the insatiable appetite for local drama. The first sign was the sleek black news van parked conspicuously at the end of the cul-de-sac, its satellite dish aimed skyward like an ominous metallic flower. Then came the reporters, their microphones thrust forward like weapons, their cameras flashing, turning Alex's once private home into a public curiosity. Local HOA in heated dispute over alleged exotic zoo in residential area, blared "East." Headline on the Willow Creek Herald's front page, accompanied by a blurred, grainy photo of the tamarin peeking from its enclosure, snapped illicitly by a brave or foolish neighborhood teenager. The story, sensationalized for maximum impact, painted Alex as an eccentric rule-breaker, a danger to the community, while Mrs. Henderson, meticulously primped and severe, gave sound bites about maintaining property values and ensuring public safety. Social media exploded. The comments section beneath news articles and Facebook posts became a battleground. "Disgusting. What if one of those things gets out?" one person wrote, echoing Mrs. Henderson's fear-mongering. "HOA tyranny. Let the person rescue animals. It's licensed," countered another, championing Alex's cause. "If it's licensed, what's the big deal?" "Sounds like Mrs. Henderson needs to get a life," chimed in a third, sparking a thread of sarcastic emojis. The sheer volume of opinion, both vitriolic and supportive, was overwhelming. Inside the house, the media frenzy outside added a layer of profound stress to Alex's already burdened existence. Every rustle of the leaves, every distant siren seemed amplified, making the delicate animals skittish. The golden-tailed gecko, usually placid, refused its crickets for a day, and the young rehabilitated barn owl, still recovering from a wing injury, hooted anxiously at the unfamiliar sounds. Alex spent every waking moment trying to maintain the meticulous routines of the sanctuary, a Herculean task now complicated by constant phone calls from eager journalists, legal threats from the HOA's freshly retained aggressive law firm, and the nagging fear that one wrong move could jeopardize everything. Food deliveries became discreet, arriving after dark, and veterinary visits were carefully coordinated to avoid the flashing cameras. The financial strain was already immense. Legal retainers were staggering, and the increased stress on the animals meant higher vet bills. Sleep became a luxury Alex could barely afford, their face etched with fatigue. But their eyes, when they looked at the sleeping form of the previously timid tamarin, or the steady gaze of the hawk, still burned with unwavering resolve. Just as the crushing weight of the situation threatened to overwhelm, the first signs of support began to filter through the noise. A discreet text from Mr. Peterson, who had seemingly developed a conscience, offered a warning about the HOA's upcoming strategies. Then, a knock on the back door revealed Sarah Jenkins, a quiet elderly woman from down the street, holding a casserole dish and a determined glint in her eye. "Alex," she said, her voice surprisingly firm, "I saw the news. My grandson works at the animal shelter, and he told me about all the good work you do. Mrs. Henderson is a menace. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate." It was a small gesture, but the warmth of her solidarity felt like a lifeline. A few days later, an email landed in Alex's inbox from Wild Hearts Defenders, a national animal rights organization. Their message was succinct. "We've been following your case. We understand the unique challenges of licensed exotic animal rescue in residential areas. We believe in your mission. Our legal team is ready to offer pro bono assistance." The email was signed by a fierce-sounding attorney named Lena Sharma, and the promise of experienced legal muscle brought a wave of relief so profound it nearly buckled Alex's knees. But just as hope began to flicker, the HOA escalated its offensive. Mrs. Henderson, emboldened by a segment on a national morning show where she portrayed herself as a valiant defender of suburban peace, called an emergency homeowners meeting. The agenda was singular: vote to strip Alex's property of its residential zoning, effectively making the sanctuary illegal, and to impose maximum daily fines for every single animal housed on the property. The meeting announcement, delivered via certified mail, included a chilling sentence. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action for property forfeiture. The stakes had been raised exponentially. It was no longer just about fines or reputation. It was about Alex's home, their life's work, and the very future of every precious life within the sanctuary. The loop had tightened, the conflict now a full-blown war for survival. The relentless pressure from the media and the HOA had begun to take its insidious toll, not just on Alex but on the delicate ecosystem of the sanctuary itself. The constant buzz of cameras, the unfamiliar faces peering over fences, the shrill demands from Mrs. Henderson's aggressive new lawyer, it was an ambient stress that seeped into every corner, and the animals, acutely sensitive, felt it deepest. The first truly devastating blow struck with the bald eagle. Freedom, a majestic, rehabilitated raptor who was just weeks away from release. Freedom, brought to Alex after a severe wing injury and months of painstaking care, had always been a symbol of hope, a testament to the sanctuary's mission. Now he was listless, refusing food, his piercing gaze dulled, his powerful talons clenching weakly. Dr. Chen, the sanctuary's dedicated veterinarian, looked grim during her emergency visit. Her brows furrowed over Alex's shoulders as they examined the bird. Stress-induced respiratory infection, Alex. His immune system is compromised. The constant disruption, the noise. It's breaking him down. The diagnosis was a cold, hard knot in Alex's stomach. Freedom, the embodiment of their fight, was succumbing to the very battle they were waging. The expensive antibiotics, the specialized round-the-clock care Freedom now required, were yet another gaping hole in the already hemorrhaging sanctuary budget. Lena Sharma, the attorney from Wildheart's Defenders, a formidable woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper legal mind, had managed to stave off the immediate injunction, buying Alex a precious few weeks. But the HOA wasn't idle. Mrs. Henderson, fueled by public anger and bolstered by the new legal counsel, launched a multi-pronged assault. First, they initiated daily fines of $500 per animal for non-compliance with residential zoning, backdated to the day of the raid, which quickly amounted to tens of thousands of dollars Alex simply didn't have. Then came the health department. Complaint alleging unsanitary conditions and potential biohazards, leading to unannounced inspections that disrupted feeding schedules and terrified the more sensitive nocturnal animals. Posters plastered around the neighborhood, seemingly from concerned citizens but clearly HOA orchestrated, warned of zoonotic disease risk and property value plunge, designed to turn public opinion firmly against Alex. The most insidious tactic, however, was the official petition circulated by Mrs. Henderson herself, demanding Alex be forced to relocate the entire sanctuary within 30 days or face complete property seizure. This wasn't just about rules anymore, it was about outright eviction, a full-scale assault on Alex's home and their life's purpose. Just when Alex thought they couldn't endure any more, a new, far more powerful shadow loomed. A formal letter arrived bearing the official seal of Willow Creek County Animal Control. It wasn't about existing complaints. It was a notice of intent to conduct a comprehensive assessment of exotic animal welfare and facility suitability for long-term housing, scheduled for the following week. This wasn't the HOA's petty squabble. This was the county, with the power to truly seize every animal if they found any perceived deficiency, regardless of Alex's licenses. The subtle implication, later confirmed by a worried whisper from Mr. Peterson, was that a powerful property developer who had long eyed Alex's large, strategically located lot for a new commercial complex was quietly pulling strings within. The county government, leveraging the HOA dispute to push Alex out. This was no longer just about Mrs. Henderson's bylaws. This was about corporate greed and political maneuvering, a foe far more formidable than a homeowners association. The weight of it all became unbearable. One particularly dark evening, after a grueling day of trying to hand-feed a resistant Freedom, fending off a health inspector, and listening to Lena Sharma explain the bleak financial outlook, Alex found themselves slumped against the cool glass of an empty enclosure, tears silently tracing paths down their dust-streaked cheeks. The house, usually alive with the soft chirps, rustles, and coos of its inhabitants, felt suffocatingly quiet in that moment. The dream felt shattered, impossible. What was the point? All this struggle, all this sacrifice, and now Freedom was dying, the money was gone, and soon everything would be taken away anyway. The exhaustion was bone deep, a raw ache in their very soul. Maybe they're right, a voice whispered in the back of Alex's mind. Maybe I am a fool. Maybe I can't do this. The thought of surrendering, of watching the animals be dispersed to unknown fates, was a pain worse than any physical wound. It was in this moment of profound despair that a soft, insistent nuzzle against Alex's arm broke through the darkness. It was Pip, the rescued sugar glider, a tiny, wide-eyed creature Alex had nurtured back from near death after its previous owner had tried to illegally sell it online. Pip, usually shy with anyone but Alex, climbed onto their shoulder, its small velvet body a warm comfort, its soft chittering a gentle plea for attention. Alex slowly reached up, stroking Pip's head. Looking into Pip's trusting, luminous eyes, then glancing towards the dimly lit enclosure where Freedom rested, a flicker of something reignited within Alex. It wasn't just Pip, or Freedom, or any single animal. It was all of them. Each one a life saved, a story redeemed. This wasn't just a house. It was a last chance. This wasn't just about Alex, it was about every creature that depended on them. The exhaustion was still there. The fear still gnawed, but beneath it, a fierce, protective fire began to burn anew. Surrender was not an option. Not for Pip, not for Freedom, not for any of them. The developers, the county, the HOA, they had underestimated Alex's resolve, and they had vastly underestimated the power of the lives Alex was fighting to save. With a renewed, defiant glint in their eyes, Alex gently set Pip back into its habitat, stood up, and pulled out their phone. A new plan already forming in their mind, fueled by an unwavering, desperate determination. The fight was far from over. The Willow Creek Community Center's main hall, usually reserved for mundane bake sales and tedious board meetings, pulsed with an almost electric energy. Every seat was taken, the overflow spilling into the aisles, a stark testament to the local and now national fascination with Alex Miller's suburban zoo. News cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like hungry eyes, while protesters, both for and against Alex, picketed outside, their chants a low, persistent hum. The special meeting to address property violation and Publix nuisance, as the agenda dryly stated, was anything but special. It was a pressure cooker, the culmination of weeks of escalating threats, media frenzy, and Alex's desperate fight. Mrs. Henderson sat at the head table, flanked by the HOA's formidable legal counsel, Mr. Sterling, a man whose expensive suit seemed to exude condescension. She looked triumphant, her lips pressed into a thin, self-satisfied line, confident in the overwhelming evidence of violations. Mr. Peterson, surprisingly, was absent, a last-minute family emergency cited, which Alex suspected was a convenient escape. Lena Sharma, Alex's sharp-eyed attorney from Wild Heart's Defenders, sat beside Alex, a calm, unwavering presence amidst the storm. The meeting droned through opening statements, Sterling presenting a damning case of property value degradation, health risks, and bylaw breaches, each point punctuated by projected photos of signs warning of biohazard, keep out, that the HOA had secretly erected around Alex's property. Alex felt a surge of cold fury, but Lena's hand on their arm was a silent anchor. Then came Alex's turn. Lena had advised a simple, direct approach, but Alex knew this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a plea for understanding, a human story against the cold letter of the law. As Alex walked to the podium, a wave of whispers rippled through the hall. Taking a deep breath, Alex didn't launch into a legal defense. Instead, they began to speak, their voice clear and resonant, about the very first animal they'd rescued, the traumatized baby kinkajou found by the highway, and the profound, life-altering commitment that had been born in that moment. They spoke of each animal in the sanctuary by name, detailing their individual stories of abuse, neglect, and miraculous recovery. The room, which had been buzzing with murmurs, gradually fell silent, captivated by the raw honesty and heartfelt passion in Alex's voice. They spoke of the red-handed tamarin, once terrified and malnourished, now thriving. They spoke of the blue iguana, rescued from a horrific cage, now vibrant and healthy. And then Alex paused, their gaze sweeping the room, meeting the eyes of Mrs. Henderson, then Sterling, then the bewildered faces in the audience. And finally, Alex's voice trembled slightly but held firm, "I want to introduce you to freedom." From behind a partition near the stage, carefully brought in by Lena's team and a trusted volunteer, a large, shrouded cage was slowly wheeled forward. The murmurs erupted again, louder this time. Alex reached in and, with a gentle, practiced hand, brought out Freedom, the bald eagle. The majestic bird, fully recovered now after weeks of intensive care and a renewed determination born from Alex's unwavering fight, perched calmly on Alex's leather-gloved arm. Its fierce amber eyes scanned the room, majestic and dignified. A collective gasp rippled through the hall, followed by scattered applause. Mrs. Henderson's face went white. Sterling visibly stiffened. "This is freedom," Alex continued, their voice thick with emotion. "A symbol of our nation, rescued from despair. He was weeks from release when your actions, Mrs. Henderson, and the unrelenting stress you inflicted upon my home and my sanctuary nearly killed him. He developed a severe respiratory infection. It cost thousands to save him, money I didn't have, money I fought to raise while battling your unjustifiable claims." A few audience members gasped. Some looked appalled. "You talk about property, values, and bylaws," Alex continued, gesturing towards Freedom, who let out a soft, almost imperceptible cry. "But what about compassion? What about the value of a life? What about the moral obligation to protect creatures when no one else will?" Just as Mrs. Henderson sputtered a furious retort, an unexpected turn blindsided everyone. Mr. Peterson, whose absence had been announced, suddenly burst through the side doors, his face flushed, clutching a thick stack of papers. "Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Sterling, I have something," he panted, rushing to the table. Sterling tried to silence him, but Peterson, emboldened by a sudden surge of courage, slammed the documents onto the table. "I found them, hidden in the old files, the original zoning variances from 1987. They explicitly state that properties over 2 acres with approved state and federal permits for educational or conservation purposes are exempt from certain pet clauses. Alex's property, with its original agricultural designation, falls under this." He pointed to the documents triumphantly. Mrs. Henderson looked utterly aghast, while Sterling snatched the papers, his face a mask of shock and anger. The hall erupted. Lena Sharma's face broke into a triumphant grin. This was the dramatic revelation, the loophole, the undeniable proof Alex had been waiting for. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Mrs. Henderson's authority crumbled, her face a picture of stunned defeat. The final verdict, delivered after hours of heated debate and Sterling's desperate attempts to discredit the newly found evidence, was a bittersweet resolution. The county, under pressure from public opinion and the irrefutable zoning variance, refused to seize the animals. The HOA's motion to evict Alex was dismissed. However, in a compromise brokered by Lena and the HOA, stringent new conditions were imposed, reinforced soundproofing on all enclosures, weekly independent inspections, a mandatory buffer zone around the property, and a significant one-time community impact fee to cover the HOA's legal costs. It wasn't a total victory. The financial burden was still immense, and the constant scrutiny would be a new challenge. But the sanctuary was safe. In the immediate aftermath, the cameras remained, but the tone had shifted. News reports now featured freedom, majestic on Alex's arm, and highlighted the tireless efforts of Sanctuary Haven. Donations, though still insufficient to cover all the bills, began to trickle in from around the country, spurred by the sympathetic media coverage. Alex, utterly exhausted but profoundly relieved, watched as freedom, now fully recovered and ready, soared into the vast blue sky days later, a powerful emotional release. The remaining animals, though still under a watchful public eye, settled back into their routines, the oppressive tension easing. The lasting message, etched into Alex's heart and broadcast across the airwaves, was clear. Sometimes the fight for what's right isn't easy, and victory isn't always absolute. But for the voiceless, for the forgotten, for those who truly need a second chance, the fight is always worth it. The sanctuary, no longer a hidden secret, now stood as a beacon of hope, its future uncertain but its mission defiantly clear.